A motif in music is basically a short, simple musical phrase. For example, motifs are then expanded on as the piece develops. A leitmotif, then, is a specific kind of motif that represents a person, place, or idea in a story. For example, Darth Vader. The word leitmotif is anglicized from German, as the concept of a leitmotif was probably first seen in operas by Richard Wagner, aka one of the worst people who ever lived. And you know who else uses a lot of leitmotifs? Toby Fox. If you're one of the people who subscribed to this channel when I was a Genshin Impact YouTuber like 4 years ago, first of all, face reveal, hi. And second of all, you're probably very confused. If you're not one of those people though, that's a lore drop for another time. I made this graph and posted it on TikTok and got like 1 million comments asking for a video essay anywhere between like 1 hour and 8 hours. And my attention span is about 20 minutes, so let's see how this goes. The first thing you hear when you open Undertale. It's generally considered the main theme of the game, and it's featured in a lot of tracks. Once Upon a Time, the track that plays during the opening story sequence of the game, which tells the story of the war between the monsters and the humans, and how not you, the player, but the first human to fall underground, Chara, ended up there. If you didn't read the spoiler warning and haven't played Undertale, now would be a great time to go play it real quick and come back, because I just spoiled the whole game, my bad. Next, it's in Start Menu and also Menu parentheses full, which is just menu music. Menu full is just Start Menu but more fleshed out, and it plays in the menu after beating Asriel but before leaving the underground in the pacifist route. Home and Home Music Box. Home plays when you reach Toriel's home in the ruins, and the music box version plays after you fall asleep. The Once Upon a Time leitmotif plays over the small home leitmotif. Hotel plays in the Mettaton Hotel. Can you really call this a hotel? I didn't receive a mint on my pillow or anything. Plays when Alphys turns your phone into a jetpack and you have to go get the human soul substitute during Mettaton's cooking show. Undertale, the track that plays in New Home while the player learns about Asgore, Toriel, and Asriel and Chara. The song layers the Once Upon a Time leitmotif over his theme, which we will see later. The Choice is the track that plays in the Judgment Hall with Sans, and when the player is given the choice to spare Asgore, and this track is actually just the second part of Undertale slowed down by 666%. Fallen Down Reprise, syncopated to 3/4. I'm gonna say syncopated to insert time signature here quite a few times in this video, so it's time for a quick explanation of time signatures. I will try to keep it as simple as possible. A time signature is made up of two numbers, one on top and one on the bottom. The bottom number is the type of note, and in most cases is either a 4 meaning quarter note or 8 meaning eighth note. There are definitely others, but for our purposes we don't need to learn about that until we get to Deltarune and need to analyze Sanctuary. The top number is how many of those are in the measure. The most common time signature, 4/4, also known as common time, is 4 quarter notes in a measure and is counted like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. This is the time signature Once Upon a Time is in. 3/4 then is 3/4 notes in a measure, and it's typically thought of as the waltz time signature because if you think of a waltz like Bleu Danube or something, that's how the waltz goes. It goes 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. The Fallen Down motif is in 3/4, but the Once Upon a Time leitmotif is in 4/4, so some small rhythm adjustments are made to make Once Upon a Time fit over Fallen Down in Fallen Down Reprise. But it's still very recognizably the Once Upon a Time leitmotif. And Fallen Down Reprise is basically Fallen Down extended, and it plays when Toriel intervenes in the Asgore fight. Hopes and Dreams, the track that plays during the first phase of the Azrael fight, which mixes the Once Upon a Time leitmotif with Your Best Friend. Save the World, the track that plays during the final phase of the Azrael fight, which also mixes the Once Upon a Time leitmotif with Your Best Friend. Final Power is the track that plays when Azrael breaks the barrier, and it's just Hopes and Dreams reversed. Reunited is the track that plays during the epilogue. Guys is the track that plays during the first part of the credits before it gets turned into like a game. This song features literally every leitmotif in the game. If you want to turn this video into a drinking game, take a shot every time I mention Bring It In, guys. Last Goodbye, the track that plays during the second part of the credits that thanks all of the Kickstarter backers whose names you have to dodge. And Good Night, the last song on the soundtrack. Flowey is the first character you meet in the underground, and when he first approaches you, you hear his deceptively cheerful leitmotif. First, in the track, Your Best Friend. Titled such because Flowey is actually Azrael, the best friend of Chara. At the end of the pacifist route when this is revealed, you hear the same leitmotif in 5 more songs. Your Best Nightmare, the track that plays during the Photoshop Flowey fight. This leitmotif is most noticeably in the sections that play during the soul encounters. Finale, the track that plays when the souls all come together to help the player at the end of Photoshop Flowey. The leitmotif is played in minor rather than major, but it's definitely there. Hopes and Dreams, because Flowey is Azrael. Save the World, because Flowey is Azrael. Last Goodbye, because why the fuck not? While we're on the topic of Flowey, there's also the Your Best Nightmare leitmotif that plays at the beginning of Your Best Nightmare. Also heard in You Idiot, which plays right before Photoshop Flowey, and Burn in Despair, which plays during Azrael Phase 2 when he kinda just fucks you up. After Flowey ends up not being your best friend after all, you are saved by Toriel, and your best friend is replaced by Fallen Down. This is a smaller leitmotif repeated only in Fallen Down Reprise, obviously, when Toriel once again saves you, this time from her own ex-husband Asgore, and Bring It In, guys. I was joking about the drinking game. Please do not do the drinking game. As you and Toriel proceed into the ruins, you are met with a new leitmotif first in the song Ruins, because you're in the ruins. This leitmotif reappears in the area Waterfall, in the song Waterfall. This is the track that plays for a lot of the Waterfall area, which, by the way, does sample Ooh. It also plays in Quiet Water, which is just another Waterfall track that plays in some of the more populated, less spooky areas of Waterfall, like when you're with Gerson or the ice cream guy. It also appears in some tracks at the end of Pacifist, like N Ending, which plays during Sans' phone call at the end of a neutral route. Don't Give Up, which plays when Flowey traps all the monsters in his vines and they encourage you to fight him. Respite, the track that plays when you reach the surface. It's also pretty prevalent in a lot of Undyne's themes. Nah! And Fear of Justice in Pacifist, which play before and during her fight respectively. And But the Earth Refused to Die and Battle Against the True Hero in Genocide, which play before and during her fight respectively. And Battle Against a True Hero is connected to Power of Neo because the first 36 seconds of Battle Against a True Hero are just the less cool version of Power of Neo. I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is Undyne's leitmotif since she has a pretty clearly established one later on, but it could serve to say that Undyne is like the true definitive hero of the underground, especially in the Genocide route because she literally uses determination. Uwa So Temperate, Uwa So Holiday, and Uwa So Heats are all variations on each other, but otherwise aren't really connected to any other tracks on the Undertale soundtrack. They are connected to one of the new songs from Deltarune, and also my personal favorite song from Deltarune, but I haven't added Deltarune to the graph yet because I need to buy more string. I'm trying to go in soundtrack order the best I can, which ironically means that we're jumping around a lot because that's kind of just how leitmotifs work. But like, how else was I supposed to do this? When you are approached by your first enemy, you are met with a new leitmotif in the song Enemy Approaching, because there's an enemy approaching. This track is connected to Anticipation, which plays during the first dummy fight, the dummy that doesn't do anything, because Anticipation is just the bass line of Enemy Approaching without the melody. There's two variations of this leitmotif, but they sound so similar that it's not really worth considering them two different leitmotifs. And this is the second one. This leitmotif and or its variation appear in Dog Song, which plays whenever Toby's doing funny Toby things like the artifact room or so-called hard mode. Temmie Village, which plays when you find Temmie Village in Waterfall. Tem Shop, which plays at the shop in Temmie Village. Bring it in, guys. I would also like to make the argument that this leitmotif appears in Amalgam and Stronger Monsters, since they all begin with basically the same progression. Amalgam really just sounds like Enemy Approaching but chopped up and spooky, and Stronger Monsters just sounds like Enemy Approaching but more dramatic. Normally, I would consider claims like this a huge stretch, as you will see at the end of the video where I talk about a lot of claims I find very stretchy, but because these are all enemy encounter themes, I would like to argue that this was done intentionally. This also allows me to bring in Barrier, since Barrier is a sample from Earthbound, and Amalgam is a track made up of a bunch of samples from Earthbound, one of which just so happens to be the same sample used in Barrier. Leitmotif moment. After Toriel leaves you and you decide to continue progressing through the ruins on your own, you meet the objective, undeniable best character in the game, Nabstabluk. Their fight introduces a new leitmotif. This is played in Ghost Fight when you fight Napstablook. I'm also like 90% sure Ghost Fight and Dog Base are connected, with Dog Base just being like the baseline for Ghost Fight. Dummy, which plays when you fight Mad Dummy, because Mad Dummy is actually just a ghost in the body of a dummy and also Napstablook's cousin, so the relationship makes sense. And Pathetic House after Napstablook saves you from their crazy cousin, and you get to go to their house and partake in what historians know to be the first ever recorded instance of floor rotting. The second part of the leitmotif also makes an appearance in Spider Dance. Not sure if Muffet's connected to the ghost cousins in any way. My personal theory is that the leitmotif is included because Napstablook is objectively the best character in the game, and Spider Dance is objectively the best song on the soundtrack. Determination, the song that plays when you die. I'm quite familiar. It appears in one other song outside of the death screen, and that is, of course, Asgore's boss fight music. And this can be thought of as his leitmotif since he's the guy talking when Determination plays on the death screen too, but there's also... Bergen Trekong, so who knows? I'm just gonna call it the Determination theme because that's what the song is called. A solid argument for Heartache being Toriel's leitmotif instead of Fallen Down is that it's literally her boss theme. This motif appears in one other track, that of course being Asgore's boss fight, in which he will pretty much let you win once you give him a single whiff of Toriel's homemade pie because the man is not over his ex-wife. It's sand. This is pretty much undoubtedly Sans' leitmotif, and it appears in the songs Sans, when you first meet Sans, and also just in my head 24/7 on loop because there's nothing else going on up there. It's Raining Somewhere Else, which plays when you go to the MTT restaurant with Sans and he casually says he was gonna kill you at some point but then changed his mind. Song that might play when you fight Sans, which never actually plays when you fight Sans. And bring it in, guys. However, this leitmotif is nowhere to be found in Megalovania. More on that later. The funny guy. Heard in Nyehehe when you first observe Papyrus from behind the conveniently shaped lamp. Bone Trussel, Papyrus's boss theme. Song that might play when you fight Sans. This actually strongly supports my theory that Papyrus and Sans are brothers. Bring it in, guys. This leitmotif is kind of like two leitmotifs stacked on top of each other wearing a trench coat. So here's the first half. And here's the second half. This is first heard in Snowy, which only has the first half of the leitmotif. It plays in the more foresty parts of Snowdin before reaching Snowdin town. Snowdin town plays when you reach Snowdin town. Shop plays in pretty much any shop. Dating Start plays at the beginning of all of the friendship quests, like the date with Papyrus, the practice date with Alphys, or the cooking with Undyne. Dating Fight is at the end of the Papyrus date when he breaks up with you in like the nicest way ever. Bring it in, guys. The second half only is then heard in some tracks near the end. Confession, when the two royal guards confess to each other in Hotland, and also when Alphys confesses to Undyne. Hopes and dreams, reunited, and bring it in, guys. Remember when I said Undyne has a pretty clearly established leitmotif? It plays when you first meet her, in the song called Undyne. The first time you actually hear this leitmotif is very faintly, at the end of Dating Tense, from when you go on your date with Papyrus, and it's syncopated to 4/4. This could serve to represent the relationship between Papyrus and Undyne. This leitmotif is also heard in Run, the track that plays whenever you're running away from Undyne, which happens a lot. As you progress through the story, a variation of the leitmotif emerges that's closer to. It's all the same notes, just slightly different rhythm and a lot more dramatic. This variation is then heard in Na and Spear of Justice, Undyne's battle themes, of course. Asgore, because Asgore was the one who taught Undyne how to fight, and bring it in, guys. Asriel's leitmotif. This is here because I'm going in soundtrack order. Really, I probably should have saved it for the end, but anyways, the first time you hear this is in Waterfall in the track Memory, which first plays when the player brings an umbrella to the statue, and then it plays again when the player falls into the garbage dump after running from Undyne the second time, and they get knocked unconscious into a bed of yellow flowers, causing them to receive a memory from Chara, the first human, from when they first met Asriel. All of the other tracks that have this leitmotif appear much later in the game, like Undertale, The Choice, which again is just Undertale slowed down, Finale, and his theme, which plays in the final part of the Asriel fight when he has a flashback of meeting Chara for the first time. For some reason, Alphys' leitmotif appears before she does. Maybe this is because she's actually there the entire time watching us through her cameras. Anyways, this is her leitmotif. And it first appears in Bird That Carries You Across a Disproportionately Small Gap, which plays when, you know. Then, depending on what order you do everything in, you hear it again in She's Playing Piano, which plays when you're standing outside Undyne's house and faintly hear her playing piano inside, and she's playing Alphys' leitmotif because lesbians. Once you make it to Hotland, you meet Alphys and you hear it in her theme when you enter her lab and she admits to her stalkerish tendencies. And it makes an appearance one last time at the end of the pacifist route in the track Here We Are, which plays in the true lab where the player discovers the secret Alphys had been hiding, as well as a bunch of other cool lore stuff. The leitmotif is syncopated to 5/4 here, which is the time signature of the song. Fun music fact, if the time signature has an odd number in it that isn't 3, you are legally permitted to call it the worst song ever and refuse to play it and throw a huge tantrum and quit music forever. I do this every time. Spooktune and Spookwave, the two spooky CDs found inside Napstablook's house, are just connected to each other. Speaking of Napstablook, it's time for Mettaton's leitmotifs. See, there's still some semblance of continuity here. I'm really trying my best. There are 3 leitmotifs related to Mettaton because he's like extra special or something, I guess. The first is what I'm going to call the Showtime leitmotif because it appears first in It's Showtime, when you meet Mettaton for the first time and he bursts through the wall of Alphys' lab. This leitmotif also appears in Metal Crusher, the theme that plays whenever you fight Mettaton in box form. Live Report, syncopated to 3/4, which plays when Mettaton puts you on live TV. Death Report, syncopated to 3/4, which plays when Mettaton tries to kill you on live TV. And Death by Glamour, Mettaton's boss theme and objectively the best song on the soundtrack. Yes, I said the exact same thing about Spider Dance. If you held a gun to my head and told me to pick between Death by Glamour and Spider Dance, I would tell you to pull the fucking trigger. The next Mettaton leitmotif is what I'm gonna call the hotel leitmotif because it's hotel. The leitmotif itself is actually just the bass line of It's Showtime and it's just a cute little swing. This leitmotif just appears in all the tracks related to MTT Hotel, so can you really call this a hotel? I didn't receive a mint on my pillow or anything. And Core Approach, which is just hotel being played from the other room as you like approach the core. And the final Mettaton leitmotif, I'm just gonna call Last Episode because it's just the track Last Episode. This is the track that plays right before Mettaton's final boss fight as you're on the rising platform. And it also appears in Metal Crusher and Death by Glamour. It literally got dark outside. There goes my continuity. After your first encounter with Mettaton, you enter Hotland like for real, and new area means new leitmotif. This is actually heard first at the end of Ruins, very faintly. It's also heard in Waterfall, but like a million times slower. This is because scientifically, heat is just really fast water. I'm kidding, I'm a music major, don't listen to me. Other than very faintly in the other 2 area themes, this leitmotif is heard in Another Medium, which is pretty much the theme of Hotland. Core, which is just Death by Glamour de-yossified. Death by Glamour, which is just Core yossified, and bring it in, guys. Oh, One True Love, Oh Dungeon, and For the Fans are all part of Mettaton the Opera. The leitmotif that represents running over a deer while getting a DUI, I guess. This leitmotif appears in
Bergentrückung,
Asgore's boss theme, Asgore, also Asgore's boss theme, and 大家把它带进来. Fun fact, a strong indicator that the United States is going into a very bad economic recession is when Asgore's boss theme becomes an internet meme. We're just gonna rapid fire these. Unnecessary Tension has the same general chord progression as Fallen Down, but I wouldn't go as far as to call this a connection. It's kind of just like a chord progression. Mysterious Place, ambient music. Premonition. Some say this has the You Idiot leitmotif. I honestly don't think it does. Danger Mystery, ambient music. Ghoul a Day, Merry Christmas. Chill, More ambient music. Thunder Snail. Why is this in the game? Wrong enemy. This is only actually in the game once a year. Can we just let it slide? Oh my is literally just this. Long elevator is just an elevator. Small shock. More ambient music. And last but most certainly not least, Megalovania. There are actually many theories on why Megalovania, supposedly Sans' boss theme, not only doesn't have any of the previously mentioned leitmotifs, but doesn't even have Sans' leitmotif. I personally really like the theory that the boss fight here isn't Sans, but it's you, the player. This could also explain why a song that might play when you fight Sans never plays, because you never fight Sans, Sans fights you. Megalovania is not Sans' boss theme, it's yours. You are the villain, and Sans is the hero trying to stop you. But the theory I believe most of all, above all others, is that Megalovania is put in the game, in this specific spot, where it feels so incredibly dissonant and out of place because Sans is Ness.